I always imagined the moment I'd tell him would feel like a movie. Some soft instrumental music playing in the background, the sunlight pouring through the window, his arms wrapping around me in disbelief and joy. I held the little white stick in my trembling hands, staring at the two pink lines for what felt like an eternity. I laughed, I cried, I even whispered, "We did it," as if he could hear me from the other room. Ethan had always talked about having a family. He'd cradle my hand and say, "One day we'll be ready. One day we'll have someone to love who's half you, half me." And I believed him. God, I believed every single word that man ever said. So I rushed out of the house like I was flying, heart pounding, phone in hand, eager to meet him at the restaurant where we had our first date. I wanted it to be special, something we'd both remember forever. I had no idea that date would burn into my memory for entirely different reasons. It was summer. The city was sticky and loud, and I barely noticed the traffic or the honking. My whole world had shifted in a matter of minutes. I turned up the radio, singing along, clutching my purse with the test inside like it was some priceless artifact. I could already imagine the look on his face, the way he'd lift me up and spin me, the way he'd whisper something like, "You've made me the happiest man alive." But life doesn't care about your dreams. Life doesn't follow scripts. The crash came out of nowhere. A blaring horn, squealing tires, shattered glass, then pain, deafening, suffocating pain. I remember the sound of metal folding in on itself, like the world was collapsing. Then silence. When I woke up, everything hurt. I couldn't speak. I couldn't see clearly. All I could hear was the beep of machines, the sterile hum of the hospital, and the voices, muffled, urgent, unfamiliar. My body felt like it had been split in half. Something vital was missing, something I couldn't name until a nurse stood by my bed and whispered, "I'm sorry for your loss." It took me a few seconds. And then it hit me like a second crash, like lightning straight through the soul. The baby, gone. The life I'd only just begun to imagine. Gone before it could even begin. I cried until there was nothing left. My voice went hoarse. My chest ached. My face ached. They told me I was lucky to be alive. They told me the man who hit me was drunk, that he ran a red light, that it was just a tragic accident. But it wasn't just an accident. I didn't know that yet, but deep down, something didn't feel right. Even then, lying in that cold bed, my face bandaged, my spirit broken, I felt it in my bones. Ethan visited once, maybe twice. I remember the look on his face, pity, not love, distance. He didn't touch me. He didn't even cry. He said, "You'll heal," and walked out of the room like I was a task on his list. Janet, his mother, showed up the next day with her perfume too strong and her words too clipped. "I told him it was too soon," she muttered, looking anywhere but at me. This kind of thing, it happens when people rush into things. She didn't say the word, miscarriage. It clung to the air like smoke, thick and unspoken. I wasn't just mourning my child. I was mourning the person I used to be, my face, bruised and unrecognizable, my womb, empty, my heart, shattered. They let me go home 2 weeks later, after surgery. They said the scars would fade, but they didn't. Not really. I stopped looking in mirrors. I avoided sunlight. I wore scarves in the summer. Ethan barely noticed. He was always on his phone, always at work, always somewhere else. And when I reached for him, when I needed him, he'd flinch, like my touch burned. One night, I heard him talking in the hallway, whispering, laughing. A woman's name slipped through the air like a dagger. Sophie. I didn't ask. I didn't scream. I just curled into myself and wondered when I became invisible. Then I found the texts. He hadn't even bothered to hide them. The messages were clear. He'd been seeing her for months. He'd promised her a future, a clean break. He called me unstable. damaged. He said the accident changed things. I confronted him. I stood there shaking, holding the phone like it might explode. He didn't even deny it, just shrugged and said, "It's not what you think." "It's exactly what I think," I spat, trembling. "You cheated on me. You abandoned me. You left me to rot." He looked at me with that cold, empty stare and said the words that sealed everything. "You were supposed to die." I felt the blood drain from my face. I couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. He kept going. "It wasn't meant to be you in the car. It was supposed to be her, Sophie. I just wanted to scare her, make her stay. I didn't know you'd be driving that night." He smiled, like it was some sick joke, like I was supposed to understand. I ran. I didn't pack a bag. I didn't even grab my wallet. I just ran until my legs gave out, and I collapsed on the steps of a church I'd never been inside. That night, I slept in the back pew, clutching my swollen face and praying to a God I wasn't sure I believed in. In the morning, I met Maxime. He found me outside the hospital, pacing. He was older, quiet, but his eyes held something I hadn't seen in weeks. Compassion. He said, "My son was the driver, the one who hit you." I froze. He took a breath. "I know what happened and I can't change it, but I can help you become someone new. If you want to disappear, if you want a fresh start, I can give it to you." I didn't speak for a long time. Then I asked, "Even if I don't want to disappear, but to come back stronger?" He smiled. "Yes, especially then." That was the moment Kate died, and someone else began to wake up. They called me Mia Cressy. At least that's the name on the new ID, the passport, the bank account. I stared at it for hours that first night, turning it over in my hand, letting the unfamiliar letters brand themselves into my mind. Mia. It didn't feel like me. But then again, neither did my own face anymore. Maxim paid for everything: surgery, recovery, a small, quiet apartment in a different part of the city. Far from Ethan, far from Janet, far from the life that had crumbled like a sandcastle beneath my feet. It wasn't just my face that changed. It was everything. My voice, my walk, even the way I looked at the world. I had to relearn how to hold a spoon, how to smile without it hurting, how to breathe without choking on grief. Every morning, I looked in the mirror and whispered, "You are Mia." And then, "You are not broken." But that was a lie. I was broken, shattered. But every day, I picked up a piece and tried to build something new. Maxim didn't ask for forgiveness. He just gave me space. He told me that his son had fled the country full of guilt, or maybe just cowardice. It didn't matter. I didn't want revenge on a stranger. I wanted to destroy the man who looked me in the eyes and said I was supposed to die. I started painting again. It came slowly at first. Just colors, then shapes, then images I couldn't quite understand. A cracked mirror, a blood-red sun, a faceless woman standing in a burning house. The gallery found me through a friend of Maxim's. They said my work had something raw, something real. They offered me a small show. I called it Resurrection. I didn't attend the opening, but Ethan did. He didn't recognize me. Not really. He walked past me twice, even nodded politely. The nerve. I watched him stare at the painting of a woman with half a face and a halo of fire. I watched his jaw tighten. The reviews came in the next day. A haunting exploration of identity, grief, and survival. I smiled for the first time in months. From that day on, I planned everything. I started a private account on social media under a different name. I shared paintings, quotes, cryptic reflections about healing from betrayal. I started gaining followers, mostly women, women who had stories, women who had scars. They reached out in private messages. One said her husband isolated her from her friends and blamed her for everything. Another said she couldn't leave because he threatened to take the kids. Another said she had tried, and he almost killed her. I listened. I replied. I started connecting the dots. Ethan wasn't just cruel to me. He was a predator, a collector of control, a man who picked women he could mold, then discard. I wasn't alone, so I started gathering them. Quietly, carefully. We called ourselves the Griffin Circle, a nod to the name I hadn't used in months. Bianca Claire Griffin. That was who I really was, the girl who loved fiercely, who dreamed big, who trusted too easily. I thought she had died in that car, but she was still there, beneath the fire and the ashes. We began collecting evidence, screenshots, emails, voice recordings, financial records. I had access to it all. Ethan was still careless, still arrogant, still believing he had buried every trace of me. I started showing up at places he frequented, never close, just enough. A flash of a smile, a turn of a head, a scent he used to love. He started spiraling. He thought he was seeing a ghost. He started drinking more. Paranoia seeped into his eyes. He snapped at employees. He fired 2 assistants in 1 week. Good. I wasn't done. I staged a leak, sent an anonymous tip to a journalist with a folder of documents. Everything we had, the cheating, the coercion, the shell companies, the bribes. The article went viral overnight. Golden Boy CEO hiding a rotten empire. He tried to spin it, blamed fake news, called it a smear campaign, but the board panicked. Janet panicked. They held a vote. I wasn't there, but I knew what happened. He walked into the CEO office on a Monday morning thinking he still ruled the world. By noon, he was escorted out with a box of his things. I watched it live on a hidden feed, thanks to one of my Griffin sisters who worked in his building. He didn't cry, he didn't rage, he just looked lost, like a little boy who finally realized the world didn't bend for him. I didn't feel pity, I felt peace. Later that night, I stood on the balcony of my apartment, the wind warm against my new face, and whispered, "This is not the end." I wasn't done painting, and I wasn't done living. I had one more step before I could let go of Mia Cressy. I had to become Bianca again, but on my own terms. Becoming Mia Cressy was like stepping into someone else's shadow, but I needed that shadow to survive. Maxim offered me the operation in quiet tones, as if he, too, feared the truth we were now sharing. He was the father of the man who hit me, yes, but he was also a man broken by guilt. He couldn't bring back my child or my old face, but he could offer me a second chance, an escape hatch into a new life. I said yes, without hesitation, not because I wanted to disappear, but because I wanted to return, smarter, stronger, unrecognizable. The surgeries took months. Skin grafts, bone reconstruction, hours spent under blinding lights, waking up swollen and silent. I learned to live in mirrors that didn't reflect the woman I once was. It hurt like hell. Not just the flesh, but the absence. I mourned the face that once greeted me every morning. The face that Ethan once touched with the softest fingertips. The one that belonged to a mother who would never meet her child. But with each scar that faded, I gained something sharper. Resolve. The nurses called me Mia. I practiced answering to it like I'd always known that name. Mia Cressy. It tasted like vengeance and possibility. When I finally left the clinic, I wasn't limping. I was standing taller than ever. My hair was darker now, cropped short, my cheekbones a little higher, my eyes held a fire I never let burn before. I went to Florence, then Madrid, then Lisbon, building a life under the radar, painting by candlelight, renting studios with cash, making friends who never asked too many questions. And then, 2 years later, I returned to the city I once called home. Not as Kate, not as the broken wife of Ethan Caldwell, as Mia Cressy, an artist with an acclaimed portfolio and a silent storm riding in her chest. I rented a gallery space downtown, small but soaked in light. I started an exhibit called Shadows of Truth. Each canvas was a memory, twisted and half obscured. A broken crib, a blood-red steering wheel, a mother's hand reaching into fog. The critics called it haunting, bold, intimate. I called it my revenge. I invited them all to opening night. Ethan, now newly promoted to CFO at Caldwell and Caldwell. Janet, smug in her pearls. Even Ethan's new girlfriend, a marketing executive with two white teeth and vacant eyes. None of them recognized me, not at first. But when they stood before the painting titled Reconstruction, the truth began to ripple across Ethan's face. It was the only canvas that showed a full face. Mine. Not the new one, not Mia's, but the one I wore before, the one he destroyed. He paled, his hands clenched, his eyes darted from me to the portrait and back. I smiled. "Do you like it?" I asked him. My voice was lower now, steadier, controlled. He opened his mouth, closed it. Janet stepped forward, her gaze sharp. "You look familiar," she said. "I should," I answered. "You buried me." The room shifted. Conversations halted. Eyes turned. "What is this?" Ethan hissed. "This," I said, "is the unveiling." And I turned to the crowd. "I'm not who you think I am, and neither is he." In the days that followed, the media storm exploded. I gave interviews, anonymous at first, then increasingly bold. I released the evidence I had hidden for so long. Voice recordings, emails, surveillance footage Maxim had helped me acquire. Proof that the crash wasn't random. Proof that Ethan had manipulated a man into threatening his mistress and got his wife killed instead. Except I wasn't dead. And I wasn't done. A class action lawsuit began. Former employees, a former intern, a former friend. They came forward with their own stories, and slowly the golden boy turned to rust. Ethan was fired, indicted. Janet vanished from society columns. But that wasn't the part that mattered most. The part that mattered was the letter I wrote to my child. I left it at the foot of the sculpture I made from the twisted remains of my old car, now part of a permanent exhibit in a women's center I funded under the name Bianca Claire Griffin. Because that's who I became in the end. Not Kate, the broken wife, not Mia, the vengeful ghost, but Bianca, alive, reborn, whole. I teach painting classes now. I walk without fear. I sleep without medication. I even smile when I see new mothers with their babies, not out of bitterness, but out of hope. Because sometimes, to find yourself, you have to lose everything first. And then, piece by piece, you build something better. Something only you can define, something unbreakable. My hands are steady now. My heart, once a wounded drum, beats with purpose. I look at the world and see not the ruins of what I've lost, but the foundation of what I've rebuilt. I speak openly now at survivor conferences and abuse forums, not as a victim, but as a woman who refused to stay silent. Every word, every painting, every breath I take is an act of defiance, of healing. The canvas isn't just my revenge, it's my voice, my proof that truth doesn't die in silence. It lives when we give it shape, and I'll never stop painting. Because I am not what they did to me. I am what I chose to become.